The US is China's largest trading partner, and China's the United States' second largest trading partner, just behind Mexico. We're likely to see, again, less trade and investment in certain sectors, but a wholesale decoupling I don't think is possible, nor would I suggest is it desirable.
What is driving the discussion about decoupling from China in the US?
I would say, first of all, that economics is increasingly subordinated to national security. Everything these days in Washington in particular is viewed through the lens of national security. When you get into the specifics, I think the US has a lot of legitimate complaints about Chinese international trade and investment practices. The list includes cyber hacking into commercial networks to steal trade secrets, the abuse of intellectual property, the forced transfer of technology to Chinese joint venture partners as a condition of doing business in China, overly generous and trade distorting industrial subsidies, as well as forced labor in Xinjiang. And then I do think there is a concern in the United States, maybe a suspicion about China's geopolitical ambitions these days. I think, by way of example, I think the Hong Kong national security law that passed in 2020 which effectively annexed Hong Kong into mainland China. And there's also a belief that China plans to take control of Taiwan militarily in the not so distant future. So I think those are the issues that are animating the discussion about decoupling versus de-risking versus nearshoring.
In what industry is decoupling from China seen as most urgent or important?
I think those industries with national security nexus, but particularly technology. The US has concerns about dual-use products that are used for both civilian and military purposes. Again, think of semiconductors that are used in a telephone, but also weapon systems, or, semiconductors are basically ubiquitous in society today, and basically everything that we use has a semiconductor in it. And the question is low grade semiconductors that you use for, a microphone, is that different than, a high tech semiconductor, cutting edge semiconductor that's used in a weapon system? And I think it is. And so I think that it's likely that we will see some decoupling in the high tech sectors of society, but maintain a trade and investment relationship in not so high tech products and services.
Is a complete US decoupling from China possible?
I don't believe a hard decoupling with China is possible. The two nations today account for 40% of global GDP. The US is China's largest trading partner, and China's the United States' second largest trading partner, just behind Mexico. We're likely to see, again, less trade and investment in certain sectors, but a wholesale decoupling I don't think is possible, nor would I suggest is it desirable. I think the European Union estimates that about 94% of all trade and investment between the European Union and China is unobjectionable. That is, it doesn't raise national security concerns, nor is it the result of a one-sided dependency on China. And if you did a similar analysis in the United States, I think you would find a similar result that yes, there are certain portions of trade and investment and the economy that may raise national security concerns, but a lot of it doesn't. And I think that it's healthy to maintain those kinds of trade and investment relationships that don't implicate national security in any way. I think that the average American would be implicated if the United States substantially raised tariffs on imports from China, and China did the same in retaliation. I think the average American would see dramatically higher costs at the cash register for everyday items. Again, not necessarily high-tech items like a phone, although that would be implicated as well. But we get a lot of products from China, and we send a lot of products to China. And if you're an American farmer or rancher, you need access to the Chinese market. And if you decoupled the two economies, you're losing out on a very large potential customer base, right? China has 1.4 billion people, and you want to be able to reach those people and sell products to them. and we want to receive products from Chinese producers as well. So I think the average person, sometimes might try to tune out geopolitics, but I think that this issue in particular, it really does come down to dollars and cents, and it would make life harder for poorer Americans in particular, sort of on the margin. I think they would be the most affected by a wholesale decoupling of the two economies.